Do you feel like you are working harder than ever, yet your savings buy less and less? That feeling is not a coincidence. It is the silent, invisible signature of a 2,000-year-old financial pattern, a corrosive force that brought down the mightiest empires the world has ever seen. We are not talking about foreign invaders or a sudden military collapse. We are talking about something much more insidious. The slow, deliberate financial self-destruction that begins not at the gate but within the treasury. This is the blueprint for the downfall of empires, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The pattern begins with Rome. For centuries, the Roman Empire was the gold standard of stability, literally. Its economic backbone was the silver denarius, a coin of nearly pure metal, trusted from the shores of Britain to the sands of Egypt. This coin was more than money. It was the physical representation of Roman confidence and power. But running an empire, paying legions, building roads, financing wars of conquest, is the most expensive business in history. By the 3rd century after Christ, the immense cost of maintaining that global reach exceeded Rome's ability to fund it through honest means. This is the first critical turning point in the downfall pattern, when the cost of maintaining the empire outstrips the honest means to pay for it. The emperors were forced to choose between political embarrassment, raising taxes openly, or a hidden, silent tax on their people. They chose the dark path. They started the Great Debasement. A coin that was once almost pure silver had its metal content slowly, systematically diluted. Emperors like Commodus and Septimius Severus acted like financial counterfeiters. They would melt down existing coins, mix them with cheaper base metals like copper or bronze, and mint 2 or 3 new coins for every one original. The army was still paid in a denarius, but its actual value was a fraction of what it had been. The empire maintained the illusion of wealth while silently confiscating the real wealth of its citizens. The consequences were devastating. Prices soared as merchants quickly realized they were being paid in worthless metal. Trade broke down because who could trust the currency? The Roman economy dissolved into a state of barter, trust evaporated, and the citizens were impoverished. The barbarians at the gate merely cleaned up the wreckage that inflation had already created inside the walls. Rome taught us the first lesson of the pattern. The debasement of currency is the debasement of the empire itself. But the pattern doesn't stop with monetary decay, it evolves. The next major power to illustrate the downfall pattern was the Spanish Empire, built on the colossal wealth of the New World. Galleons heavy with gold and silver from Potosi and Mexico streamed into Seville. Spain, unlike Rome, had a literal flood of precious metal. This seemed like an insurmountable advantage, an endless supply of money. But the pattern is about the management of wealth, not its possession. The Spanish crown, fueled by this seemingly limitless metal supply, adopted a strategy of reckless spending. Wars, grand palaces, and a massive bureaucracy were financed not through a productive economy, but through brute force extraction. The influx of silver was so immense that it produced the price revolution. The value of the currency was not debased by mixing metals, but by flooding the market with the metal itself. The effect was the same. Prices spiral, inflation takes hold. The average Spanish citizen was priced out of their own economy. Food became expensive, wages stagnated, and the productive engine of the nation withered. The gold and silver flowed abroad into the hands of rivals, the Dutch and the English. Spain taught us the second, sharper lesson. Unlimited access to money, whether through printing or conquest, creates a false economy and accelerates internal rot. This sets the stage for the third, most sophisticated phase of the pattern, where the British Empire learned from both failures and weaponized debt itself. The British understood that the failure of Spain was in allowing its gold to leave too quickly, and the failure of Rome was in destroying trust too fast. The British genius was to move beyond physical resources and instead build their empire on the far more powerful and insidious foundation of credit and sophisticated financial architecture. They established the Bank of England, not just a bank, but an engine for war, issuing vast amounts of trustworthy debt, bonds, to fund global ambitions. This confidence was the true currency of the empire. This was the third evolution, the transition from physical wealth to financialized wealth. But even this system was subject to the same internal pressure. The cost of global dominance, the massive navies, the vast administration, the constant military engagements, placed an unbearable strain on the national balance sheet. The cracks widened in World War I and World War II. These were not merely military battles, they were financial death matches. Britain, the global creditor in 1914, ended World War I as a massive debtor, owing huge sums primarily to the United States. To finance the war, Britain had to abandon the gold standard, a necessary but fatal betrayal of the confidence their empire was built on. The government began printing money, resorting to the old Roman trick, now dressed in modern banking language. The final fatal blow came during World War II. By 1945, Britain was functionally bankrupt, and the financial power center of the globe definitively transferred from London to New York, formalized by the Bretton Woods Agreement. The British Empire's fall teaches the crucial, devastating lesson that the pattern is not about military defeat, but about financial leverage. Britain was conquered not by a foreign army, but by its own debt and the superior financial positioning of its successor. The United States inherited the throne of global financial power, but the ghost of the empire downfall pattern does not sleep. It waits for the moment the system tries to cheat its own rules. For the USA, that moment arrived on August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon unilaterally closed the gold window, unilaterally ending the convertibility of the US dollar to gold. It was the American equivalent of the Roman emperors debasing the denarius. This single act transformed the dollar, the global reserve currency, into pure fiat money, backed only by trust. This opened the floodgates to the era of the debt without end. The US government was no longer constrained by gold, meaning it could essentially print unlimited amounts of currency to finance its deficits. This is the ultimate, refined version of the ancient trick. Rome diluted its silver. The US diluted its backing. The result is structurally identical. The silent, insidious tax of inflation begins to strip the wealth of everyone who holds the currency. The Roman pattern is visible in the constant, massive expansion of the money supply since 2008 and 2020. Every new spending bill reduces the purchasing power of every existing dollar. The Spanish pattern is visible in the flood of credit and debt. The US holds the largest national debt in world history. This constant borrowing creates a false economy where asset prices detach from underlying value. The British pattern is visible in the debt burden. The US system is now grappling with a debt-to-GDP ratio that signals clear fiscal unsustainability. As interest rates rise, the cost of servicing that debt alone threatens to crowd out essential spending, creating a crisis of confidence. History is clear. No empire has ever escaped a reckoning with an abused currency and unsustainable debt. The system can run on trust for a very long time, but trust, once lost, is impossible to recover. When the global confidence in the US dollar finally snaps, whether due to relentless inflation, crippling debt service, or a geopolitical rival offering a credible alternative, the final stage of the downfall pattern will commence. This stage is not a slow decline. It is a rapid, sudden transfer of power, an economic reset that wipes out the unprepared. This is the ultimate lesson the empires of Rome, Spain, and Britain gifted us. The fall is not a surprise event. It is a predictable outcome of a predictable set of financial choices. The Roman citizen who ignored the debasement, the Spanish peasant who ignored the rising prices, the British saver who ignored the abandonment of the gold standard, they all paid the highest price. The warning signs are not whispers, they are screaming. The only choice you have left is whether you face this historical destiny blind, hoping the system will save you, or awake, understanding the pattern and building real wealth outside the illusion. The empire will fall. The only question that matters is, where will you stand when it does?